The auctioneer's voice echoed across the dusty yard, sharp and indifferent, as if he were selling old furniture instead of living souls. Behind thick iron bars, 3 retired police dogs stood shoulder to shoulder, their proud heads lowered, their eyes glistening with quiet confusion. They had once chased danger without hesitation. They had once saved lives. Now they were waiting to see who would take them home, or if anyone would at all. The wooden sign behind them read, "Auction today," and the words felt heavier than the chains around their necks. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in honoring loyalty, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that compassion still exists in this world. Officer Daniel Hayes stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, his navy uniform pressed but worn at the sleeves. At 46, with streaks of gray in his short brown hair and a face marked by years of service, he had seen things most people only watched in movies. He had spent over 2 decades in the force, working alongside K-9 partners who had become more than co-workers, they had become family. The dogs in the cage were German shepherds, once strong and fearless, now retired after years of service. One had a slight limp in his back leg. Another had a patch of fur missing near his shoulder. The third, the oldest, had cloudy eyes that still held a quiet intelligence. Daniel knew their stories. The limping one, Rex, had tracked a missing child through freezing rain and found her just before nightfall. The one with the scar, Bruno, had helped uncover explosives during a city festival. The oldest, Shadow, had once shielded his handler from harm during a dangerous operation. These were not broken animals. They were heroes who had given everything. But budgets had been cut. The department had new, younger dogs in training. The retired ones had been declared excess assets. That word had haunted Daniel for weeks. Excess. As if loyalty had an expiration date. The bidding started low. A rancher offered a small amount for one. A security company representative inquired about another. Some in the crowd seemed more curious than compassionate. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He imagined Rex chained to a lonely post, Bruno confined to a warehouse, Shadow left to wander a yard with no one who understood him. Without fully planning it, Daniel stepped forward. His voice was steady but heavy with emotion when he said he would take them. All of them. The crowd turned, surprised. The auctioneer raised an eyebrow, skeptical that one man would assume responsibility for 3 aging police dogs. Daniel didn't flinch. He signed the papers with a firm hand. He used nearly all of his savings, money he had quietly set aside for home repairs and future plans. As he clipped leashes onto their collars, the dogs looked at him with cautious curiosity. They recognized the uniform. They recognized the scent of someone who had worked beside their kind. For the first time that day, their tails moved, slowly, uncertainly. Bringing them home was the easy part. What came after tested Daniel in ways he hadn't expected. His small house on the edge of town suddenly felt even smaller. The backyard fence needed reinforcing. Veterinary visits revealed arthritis, dental problems, and anxiety issues common in retired working dogs. The medical bills stacked up quickly. Daniel picked up extra shifts at the station, taking overnight patrols that left him exhausted. His colleagues respected him, but some quietly questioned his decision. They wondered if he had taken on too much. At night, when the world was quiet, the challenges became clearer. Shadow would wake up startled, pacing as if he were back on duty. Rex struggled to climb the back steps because of his injured leg. Bruno flinched at sudden noises, conditioned by years of high-alert training. Daniel would sit on the living room floor, his back against the couch, gently stroking their fur until they calmed. He spoke softly, not in commands, but in reassurance. He told them they were safe now. He told them they had done enough. There were moments when doubt crept in. When the refrigerator was nearly empty because most of his paycheck had gone toward medication. When he looked at his worn-out couch and realized he couldn't afford to replace it anytime soon. When exhaustion made his hands tremble slightly as he poured dog food into bowls. He would close his eyes and wonder if love alone was enough. But then something began to change. The neighbors noticed the dogs during slow evening walks. Children who had once been nervous around large breeds learned their names. Rex, despite his limp, gently allowed a little girl to rest her hand on his back. Bruno sat patiently as an elderly man shared stories of his own time in service decades ago. Shadow, the oldest, found a quiet spot near the fence where he would watch sunsets, his breathing steady, peaceful. One afternoon, a local reporter stopped by after hearing about the officer who had adopted 3 retired K-9 heroes. Daniel was reluctant at first. He hadn't done it for attention. But when the story aired, something unexpected happened. Letters began arriving at the station. Small donations came from strangers. A local veterinarian offered discounted care. A carpenter volunteered to fix Daniel's fence free of charge. A pet supply store delivered food and blankets with a handwritten note thanking him for honoring the dog's service. Daniel was overwhelmed, not by the help, but by the realization that kindness could multiply. What had started as a single decision in a dusty auction yard had become a ripple through the community. The dogs changed too. Their anxious pacing lessened. Their eyes grew brighter. Rex began moving with more confidence after consistent therapy and gentle exercise. Bruno rediscovered a playful side, chasing a rubber ball across the yard like a puppy. Shadow, though slower, would rest his head on Daniel's knee each evening, a silent gesture of trust. Months passed, and Daniel's house transformed into something more than a home. It became a place of healing. People in town began asking about adopting other retired service animals. The department reconsidered its policies, exploring partnerships with rescue organizations instead of auctions. Conversations shifted. Awareness grew. One cold winter night, Daniel sat outside wrapped in a thick jacket, the 3 dogs gathered close around him. Snow fell softly, covering the yard in white. He thought about that day at the auction, the cold stares, the uncertainty, the weight of his decision. He realized that saving them had also saved a part of himself. After years of witnessing the worst of humanity, these dogs reminded him why he had joined the force in the first place. To protect, to serve, to stand by those who could not stand alone. Shadow's breathing grew slower over the next few weeks. Age was catching up. One quiet morning, with Daniel's hand resting gently on his fur, Shadow closed his eyes for the last time. There were tears, yes, deep, aching tears, but there was also gratitude. Shadow had not spent his final days in a cage or a stranger's yard. He had spent them loved. Rex and Bruno seemed to understand the loss. They stayed closer to Daniel after that. Their bond, forged through shared history and new beginnings, felt unbreakable. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps spread stories of compassion and reminds the world that small acts of courage can change lives. And before we reach the end, I have a special request. Comment the word loyalty below if you believe that those who serve, whether human or animal, deserve dignity and love when their work is done. In the end, Daniel never considered himself a hero. He would shrug off praise and say he simply did what felt right. But sometimes doing what feels right is the bravest act of all. 3 retired police dogs were once labeled excess, nearly forgotten behind iron bars. One man saw beyond their age, beyond their scars, beyond their cost. He saw their hearts. And because of that, they were never alone again.